Welcome to session 6 of your Divine Purpose Devotional. And today we're going to look at the supernatural pastor. And if you're following through with me, we're using the book that I've just published, Your Divine Purpose. And I love this one now. In the book, I've called it the Apostolic Pastor, but for today, the Supernatural Pastor. I'll never forget, my wife went on a trip on her own quite a few years ago now, and I remember her coming back and telling me about Ezekiel chapter 34 and the false pastors. I'd never heard anybody use that phrase before, and it's stuck with me, and it's become a very important part of really my life and to some extent my teaching. See, Ezekiel 34 actually basically accuses the pastors, the shepherds, of not looking after the flock. And it included something. You didn't strengthen, you didn't heal, you didn't bind up, and you didn't bring back. Now, strengthening, binding up, and bringing back probably be done in the natural, but healing, for me, put it in the supernatural. See, I believe that the pastor is a supernatural pastor. Now, we use that title. So many churches will call their senior leader a pastor, and to some extent that's okay. But it's absolutely vital that we never reduce the pastor to being a non-spiritual, non-supernatural leader. Peter uses the phrase 1 Peter 5:4, when the chief shepherd appears. Who's the chief shepherd? His name is Jesus. And of course, by now I'm sure have realized that Ephesians 4:11 are the gifts of Christ to the church. And he is, of course, the great apostle, the great prophet, the great evangelist, the great pastor, the great shepherd. And as we'll see in the next session 7, he is the teacher. And we know that too. So the pastor is to be a supernatural pastor. I believe that one of the greatest challenges to the supernatural pastor is the fear of false hope. You see, the pastor is very often looking after people, a family, through a season, maybe a challenging season of sickness of a member of the family. And it's very tempting, I think, at times to be afraid of raising false hope, of going into a home and praying and declaring you'll live and not die. And it's very challenging. But I want to tell you this, I have never released hope to somebody in that kind of a situation and had them afterwards complain to me that I raised false hope when somebody perhaps didn't get the breakthrough that we were believing for. So let's never hold back on releasing hope. And so of course the pastor is absolutely vital, and the lack of a shepherd is the reason why people wander off. It's the reason why sheep will wander off. And whilst the description of a local leader is correct, I want to say this: the pastor must be exposed to the apostolic. Because you can pastor from a welfare perspective. You can be kind of like a social worker model. But that's not what I believe that we're called to be. The gift of Christ to the church of the pastor is really to be an apostolic, a supernatural pastor. And the pastor needs to be operating from the unseen, from the place of faith, not limiting their ministry to what can be seen. So I really do believe this is vital. The pastor will embrace some seasons. See, the pastor will be, the apostolic pastor will be pastoring with people while they wait, keeping hope alive. But they'll be pastoring while they receive, walking by faith. They'll be pastoring until they're fully well or got their complete breakthrough. They're celebrating what God is doing along the way. They'll be pastoring in plenty and in lack, and they'll be maintaining a culture of abundance. Because we don't talk about a lack of abundance when there's lack, because we have a God of abundance, and we are pastoring after breakthrough and after disappointment and living unoffended. So it's a huge role. and such a vital role. But I want to really just challenge you on how you've seen the pastor. Have you kind of limited your view of the pastor? Have you not looked at them and wanted them to be leading from the supernatural, leading from the unseen, leading from the place of bringing faith, hope, and love? See, here's the key with faith, hope, and love, which really, the pastor's ministering in these three areas. All three of them operate in a place of tension. You see, you don't need faith when you've just seen your 100th blind eye open in a line. You don't need hope when you've just won the lottery, and you don't need love on your honeymoon night. See, the pastor is really operating in this place of what I call divine tension, leading the people to love in the presence of enemies, to love when somebody's disagreeing with them, leading people to have faith when they haven't seen the breakthrough yet, and leading people to have hope in the middle of the wilderness. This is the gift that the pastor brings. And the pastor, of course, just like the others, will create a culture, a pastoral culture. And that's what each of us need to be able to step into, to create and experience and enjoy a apostolic, supernatural, pastoral culture. And the three big keys to that, which of course apply to us all, but I do believe they're about cultivating a culture of love in the presence of disagreement, in the presence of enemies, in the presence of things going perhaps against us. To cultivate a culture of faith when we can't see it. That's the day-by-day pastoring. The evangelist, they're not necessarily walking with people day by day. The pastor is. The pastor is taking care of the flock, is there with them every day. And so they are maintaining the culture of love, maintaining the culture of faith on a day-to-day basis, even when things may be in the middle of, difficult, challenging news. They're creating the faith and the hope. They're keeping it alive and connecting with people. And of course, the pastor is incredibly relational, and that's a huge part of their role and their ministry. So how have you viewed the pastor? Have you allowed the pastor to be a little bit limited in your thinking, reducing the pastor from being a representative of the chief shepherd, who is also, of course, the first apostle, the prophet, and the rabbi, and the evangelist of all evangelists? Have you limited? So I just want to encourage you just to review. Choose one of those 5 things that I listed that apostolic pastors need to embrace, whether it's while people wait, while they receive, until they're well, in plenty and abundance, or after breakthrough or disappointment. And where do you find this principle in the Bible, in the lives of the early church? And declare. What can you declare to change about the way you think about the need for apostolic supernatural pastors? And reflect. What senior leaders from your life that you called pastors have a pastoral gifting? What do you notice about them? What inspires you? What encourages you? In what way do you want to become more of a supernatural pastor in your world, in the people that you meet and the people that you care for? And so I just want to encourage you. The pastor needs to be a supernatural pastor, bringing love in the presence of enemies, faith before we see the breakthrough, and hope in the middle of what we do not understand. So thanks for joining me today on session 6, the supernatural, the apostolic pastor.